Hi, Adam and Jordan. It's Annie coming to you from Ventura, California. What up? Um, I know there are questions to answer and dialogues to respond to, but I just want to start my first vlog entry in this project by just affirming and commending both of you of what a privilege it is to be your friend, to get to listen to your hearts and experience your wrestles. You guys are really refreshing breaths of fresh air. My life is just so enriched by the two of you, and it's really exciting to be a part of this project with you and to journey into some of the depths of these questions and wrestles of what does it look like to live life well? What does it look like to live life with excellence? What does it look like to love with excellence? What does it look like to really walk out this calling that each of us have chosen to walk out as followers of Christ? And not in a cliche, churchy, religious way, but in a really authentic, what does it look like to risk it all for love and to be lovers and to love and to engage and to follow on this road, right? It's just such a privilege to get to sit and have these conversations with you guys. So thankful. So I will dive into the questions you posed, Adam. I agree with Jordan. While such simple questions, so good. Actually, before I answer the questions, I'm going to start with, I wrote a couple things that you guys said that really stood out to me. Adam, I loved when you said, I refuse to let someone else's life choices dictate how I love them and how I respond to them. I thought that was absolutely incredible. What an incredible statement. And I mean, you do that. You do that so well. And Jordan, I loved what you said love is when you said it's an open door to trust. You get to be you and I get to be me. It's freedom to be ourselves. What's important to you becomes important to me. Again, like so beautiful. And I see that in you and who you are and how you live. And man, it's so refreshing. And I loved when you said that we get to be Jesus to each other. I'm like, yeah, that's totally it, which is so hard, right? It's so hard to really be Jesus to each other. Because when you think about Jesus and then you think about yourself, you realize how, I mean, for lack of better words, how incredible God really is. So I don't know how to answer what love is to me. I think love is a choice you make. It's easier for me to answer what love is to me based on the second part of question one of what drives me to love. And so, at the risk of sounding cliche and yet authentically meaning what I'm about to say, this is my answer that, yeah, it's funny because people tell me, man, you're such a good lover. Like you love so well. And I know that that's true now, but that was not true like 12, 14 years ago. I was incredibly selfish. I was pretty rotten and horrible. I did what I wanted when I wanted, no matter how it impacted somebody else. I was very selfish, very hurt, very broken. Grew up in a very codependent environment and had a lot of abuse happen in my life at a young age, which turned me extremely selfish, to where I betrayed core friendships, and did some really horrible things that, if we want to dive into at some point, we sure can. I don't think we need to today. And what drives me to love is that when I was 14, I first encountered Christ. And when I was 18, he found me again. And at 27, he continues to find me in the deepest places of my brokenness. And he will go with me anywhere into the depths of my soul. And he just loves me. Jesus just loves me so well. I can whine, I can be selfish, I can do the most self-destructive, hateful things, hurtful things. And he just loves me. His response is, I love you, child. I was going through a rough time not this past summer, but the summer before, and was going back into patterns of like binge drinking. And the Lord, I mean, I would get blacked out drunk, and the Lord's response when I would wake up in the morning was, my mercies are new each day. I mean, before I even recollected what had happened the night before, before I even had a chance to be like, oh, shoot, before I could even go to a place of condemnation and self-hatred, the Lord would speak and be like, hey, I love you, and my mercies are new every morning. And I think what drives me to love the way I love is when you really receive love like that, when you authentically receive that kind of love in a way that you can't deny, right? Because I can't deny the kind of love that Christ has poured into me. When I receive that kind of love, I have no choice but to love. And to go into the second question of like, how do we learn to love our neighbors, and why do we fear loving our neighbors? I mean, this ties into it. I think it's because we're scared. Because I think I'm going to write down, I actually had this thought, I don't know, a couple days ago when I was thinking about this question. And here's what I wrote. I don't think we know how to love our neighbor because we don't take time to ask how they need to be loved. And when we do, we're not willing to change to love them. I think to really love our neighbor is to let go of self and to love them. I think we don't get to know our neighbors because we aren't willing to change. When we encounter Christ, when we encounter people, when we encounter Christ in people, we have no choice but to change. Our worldviews are challenged. Our perceptions are challenged. Our relational fears and insecurities are challenged and brought to light. Our relationship exposes us, right? Like in relationship, we expose each other to the good and to the bad and to the ugly and to the glorious and to the beautiful. Relationship exposes us. And we are so afraid of being exposed that we choose to stay in hiding because we don't want those gross parts of us to be seen, and we don't want to, and not even by others. I mean, I think we don't want others to see them, but I think the truth of the matter is we don't want to see them in ourselves, right? I mean, it's hard to have to look at yourself and be like, man, I'm selfish, or I'm manipulative, or I'm hateful, or I'm jealous, or I'm spiteful. But the reality is, to really engage and love somebody else, we have to acknowledge those things in us. I'm not going to read, I was going to read a quotation, but I'm going to recommend everybody, you guys, get the book Overcoming the Dark Side of Leadership, because it's phenomenal on how to engage our shadow issues and learn to overcome ourselves so we really can love others well. Phenomenal book on leadership. But I have questions I want to pose to you guys that got brought up in this wrestle for me. And I'm trying to keep to a lower time limit, I think 10 minutes, right? And so I have a couple minutes. So I've been thinking about love and forgiveness and what it looks like to pour out love like Christ, right? I love how Misty says it, where he had arms wide open and a heart exposed, and he was bleeding. And yet I'm not Jesus, right? Like, Jesus is Jesus, and I want to love like Jesus, but the reality is Jesus was fully God, and while God is in me, I'm still fully man who's becoming like God, but Jesus was fully God and became like man, right? Like, it's a whole, like, oh, we could sit on that question for like days. But my question is, how do you healthily love someone when they continue to shatter boundaries and ignore them? Like, how do you love well? I mean, I get, like, yes, you daily forgive them. And I don't want to cut relationship, but I have one relationship in particular in mind where, I've asked this person multiple times in an arena of different things. I've set boundaries, and they continually just ignore them. And so I'll bring them back up, and they ignore them. And I bring them back up, and they ignore them. And I don't know what else I can do. And I don't want to cut the relationship because this person is amazing and wonderful, and yet it's causing me not to trust them because, as you said, Jordan, like, love opens the door to trust. And I think when we come to relationship, like what you said, Jordan, like, we get what's important to you becomes important to me. And so if you guys set a boundary with me, like I don't want to talk about that, or I can't go, I respect that because I respect you, and I know that you love me, and I trust you, and you trust me. And if you're not ready to go there, you're not ready to go there. And but when someone keeps breaking that, how do you, like, what does love look like in that moment? What does it look like in that place to love someone well? I hope that question makes sense. And maybe it's not a question worth dialoguing on, and maybe it is. But I'm curious to have your thoughts of, in the midst of continual brokenness and unwillingness to change or compromise, how do you really love someone in that place with integrity to who you are and your needs while still loving them? I don't, if that makes sense. I hope there's a question somewhere in there. Anyways, I hope I did okay on my first vlog post. I love you guys. You're amazing. And I look forward to hearing your responses or other questions you have to pose.